Our next speaker is Paul Gillen. He's the head of the Cybercrime Operations and Intelligence at the new European Cybercrime Center, EC3 of Europol. He's got almost 20 years of experience in fighting cybercrime, and he was the head of the computer crime investigation of the Irish Police Service. Now I have to look into my paper. It says Garda Síochána. I'm not sure if that was good. Thanks to the internet, so there's not only risks and threats on the internet, there are good things as well. Paul Gillen will explain you the major risks and threats of the internet, the major risks we're facing, what EC3 is doing in order to tackle them. And you will see he will start his presentation with some very impressive facts and figures. Paul Gillen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. And as I said, I have 30 minutes to teach you everything that I know about cybercrime. And I see some of my colleagues in the audience there might say that's about 29 minutes too long. However, I'm just going to cover some numbers. And then directly after that, I'm going to maybe outline a little bit of the threat that we're seeing at EC3 and at European law enforcement level. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about EC3 and the services that we provide to EU law enforcement member states. And then I'm going to maybe talk about one or two little successes that we've had over the last 2 years, and especially in partnership with our sister agency, Eurojust, and Ms. Connix is here, who'll speak directly after me. So first, some of the numbers to bring things into perspective for us for today. There's quite a lot of numbers that have been gathered up, 2014. Some quite staggering numbers. 7.2 billion people in the world, and 3 billion of them are internet users. Has anyone any idea what percentage of internet penetration there is in the European Union? 81%, only surpassed by the United States of America at 88%. Bear those figures in mind as I move through the presentation. This is the threat, or at least what we're seeing in the figures from various different sources that have been published recently. And yesterday I got a hold of the ENISA threat landscape, which was published, I think, over the last day or so. And with that 81% internet penetration, that leaves the European Union one of the largest, officially the second largest target for cybercrime in the world. That's a fact. There's no way you're going to get away with that, with anything like that. We're talking about losses, and the recent McAfee report said that 1% of global income has been lost to cybercrime. Cybercrime is a crime that is unbelievably underreported for fear of brand damage. People are afraid because media reporting, for example, and this is something as a society we're probably going to have to get over. Media reporting of cybercrime is always that idiot company gets hacked by a genius, spotty-faced boy of 17. And as long as that is the image, there is no incentive for victims of crime, because don't forget that's what they are. They are victims of crime. There is no incentive for those victims of crime to report to the police. If it's not reported to the police and the prosecution services, there will be no arrests and no prosecutions. If there are no arrests and no prosecutions, we will never have the full picture of the extent of the crime. Therefore, we will be working in a vacuum or a dark space where it comes to cybercrime. That is a place that we do not want to be in. So some social changes may need to take place. But that's some interesting figures there. 12,100 mobile banking Trojans stealing our money quite literally every day of the week. Are the banks and the financial institutions reporting all of those losses? And I don't think so. Okay, so some predictions for 2015. We expect to see an increase in the size and scope of the cyber threats. And again, that was confirmed yesterday by the ENISA report that I read, which is calling 2014 the year of the data breach. The threats and the emergence of new types of attack vectors, and I'm going to maybe talk about one a little bit later, are going to propose new threats for law enforcement. That's the challenges that we're going to face. Law enforcement, prosecution services are going to be really stretched to the absolute limit in order to come up with viable investigative and prosecution strategies in order for us to make a credible answer to the threat that cybercrime poses to us. And as we saw, at 81% internet penetration, we are the second largest target in the world. And on top of that, we don't have a federal police force in the European Union. And the international dimension of, for example, cybercrime means that police forces are going to have to work together much more closely than we were in the past, because even the simplest of frauds that occur on the internet will have a minimum of 3 jurisdictions. One where the victim is, the second where the perpetrator is, and the third where the funds that have been stolen from you will be diverted to. And that's the simplest one. And Ms. Connick will probably verify that in every single internet case. It is simply that is the fact. But in reality, it's far, far bigger than that, as you'll see a little bit later on. Okay, some of the cybercriminal landscape. As far as we can see, and I can't go, obviously, I only have the 30 minutes, so I can't go on and discuss every single one of these threats or challenges with you in the next 30 minutes. But just at the top left-hand side, the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything. Quite literally, I would say the most connected device that we're going to see that will cause us the biggest challenge in law enforcement, I think is going to be the connected car. And that's going to come on board, I reckon, from 2016 on. For example, what is the connected car? You go into your car breaks down, or you're having some fault, or a little light comes on the dashboard. Fundamentally, there's an engine management unit or a computer inside that car telling you that it's that fault. You bring that into the garage, and in reality, I don't know if you've noticed, if you have a modern car, the guy no longer lifts up the bonnet and sticks his head in and tells you, oh yeah, I know what that is. No, what he does is he opens the door, he pulls down the dashboard, and he sticks a computer into the OBD port, which is the onboard diagnostics port in the vehicle, and the computer will read all of the data from the 25 or 30 electronic modules that's in your vehicle, and it will tell you what's wrong with it. No, that's going on. 2016, what's going to happen with that is that's going to have a 4G SIM card inside in that car. The 4G SIM card will send internet data to you, so you'll be parked at the side of the road, and the garage will be able to do that for you. Okay, so can hackers. Some interesting investigative opportunities for police, maybe. Where a vehicle is, how many people are in it. How would you know how many people are in the car? Because the electronic seatbelt module will say there are 4 seatbelts connected in this, so there's probably 4 people in the car. Interesting stuff like that. Someone could send an SMS message at 120 kilometers an hour, please cut the fuel off to the engine. So the engine management unit will cut the fuel off, and the car will come to a nice, steady, potentially slow stop. And then the police can arrest you. Potentially, you never know. You never know. So, however, from that perspective, that's the Internet of Things. There's so many different devices that are going to come on board now that will be connected to the Internet, that will both bring us opportunities in life and will also bring us bring another threat vector to which criminals can attack. Borderlessness of the Internet. We've all heard this before. It's a tried, tested, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it's terrible, and we really can't get on. But the truth of the matter is, on a practical level, in investigations, the reality of the situation is that just take the European Union alone. Forget about the rest of the world. Just take the European Union alone. In the European Cybercrime Centre, we're servicing the needs of 28 different law enforcement agencies from 28 different member states. That's 28 different legal systems. We speak 23 different languages. And there are 1.9 million police officers in that area, all of which are responding to various different types of cybercrime, from first responder right up to advanced internet investigators. And the communication is not it's not a federation of states. We're not a federation of states, so we don't apply the same laws. We have to interact with each other in the norms of international judicial norms in order to extract evidence or get evidence from one jurisdiction to another, carry out investigations from one jurisdiction to the other. As an Irish police officer, I cannot come here to Belgium and execute any powers that I have in Ireland. It simply doesn't happen. Yet, we're expected to investigate an environment where, in fact, in reality, that's probably required at some stage. I know politically not acceptable, but in reality, probably required. Industrialisation of cybercrime as a service. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. And then last, and certainly not least, I'm going to cover underground cybercriminal markets. On the deep net, or the dark net, as we frequently call it, the place on the internet where all bad things happen, is the Tor network, for example, the onion router. And people are happily carrying on criminal activity there under the noses of law enforcement agencies all over the world, and are pretty much thumbing their noses because it's very, very difficult to find out exactly who they are, where they are, in order to identify them and make them answerable to their crimes. In those particular markets, you got the likes of the Silk Road, which obviously our EC3 and our sister agency Eurojust, in partnership with 16 member states, did some action on that last year, and I'll talk a little bit about it later on. The reality of the situation, in order to tackle those, in order to have a credible tackle of those, we had to have law enforcement and prosecutors from those 16 countries literally in the one location at the one time in order for them to speak to one another. And the language was English. People were speaking English to one another, even if it was not their second or, in some cases, even their third language. So it is quite difficult and quite a big challenge in order to mount attacks against criminals that are on those, regardless of the technology. So more research is required from academic institutions. The police and prosecution services are not going to arrest their way out of this situation. We are going to need assistance from private sector, we're going to need assistance from responsible media reporting, and we're also going to need assistance from academia in order to develop solutions that law enforcement can credibly use in the fight against cybercrime. Crime as a service. We have this, over the last 2 years, looked at this. And really, at the very, very top of that, you'll see there are elite researchers or zero-day researchers. But if you look under that, they're malware writers. So you look at the organised crime gangs, in reality, everyone, even if you caught a malware writer and you do arrest them, they don't honestly probably even believe they're part of an organised crime gang. They're just writing some code that somebody else is buying off them. Okay, they know it's malicious, but in reality, they're not potentially involved in the rest of the criminal activity that's involved. Yet they play a very important and key role in the cybercrime arena and in the organised crime groups that make up cyber criminality and that underground economy. Underneath that, so there with those, so from a law enforcement level, we're going to have to look at targeting that underground economy at the correct places that will make that pyramid topple over or be unstable, like tackling malware writers, like tackling programmers or technical experts, or people that provide the hosted systems on the internet that allow criminality to occur and regard as bulletproof hosters, for example. We're looking at money mules and muling networks that are taking the cash out from the cybercrime and the money that is stolen from our bank accounts, or the money that is generated from the Silk Road and then cashed out in various other different locations around the world. But that is crime as a service. We're seeing that as an increase. That is fundamentally the underground economy, and that's what it looks like. The value of a hacked machine. Many people have asked me, well, when you hack a machine, well, what actually can you do with it? What is everything? Well, fundamentally, as far as we're concerned, this is it. That's what can happen when your machine gets attacked. Your privacy goes out the window, your messages, your calendar, your Google, your location, for example, your phone. You quite literally, find my iPhone. If your iPhone is in your pocket and someone has managed to be in a position to get access to your accounts, they'll actually be able to track your phone, because wherever your phone is, it's generally in your pocket or your handbag or whatever the case may be. You have Facebook, Twitter looking at credentials on the right-hand side, harvesting credentials in order to get additional information. That has seen the rise in what was known at the moment as man-in-the-email attacks, for example, or CEO fraud, where organised crime gangs are monitoring people who are, for example, on LinkedIn and who actually say they're the chief this or the chief that. And the result is they get a spear phishing attack. Their email accounts are monitored for a period of a year, and then all of a sudden then an email is sent from their own email account to some junior in the organisation to say, please don't send that €1 million to that account, please send it to this, I'm away on holidays, I can't do this anymore, I'm out of the office at the moment. And we've seen multiple occasions of that, and I think the United States of America have even reported that the reported instances of that last year were up to $200 million. Okay, the invisible web. We spoke about this earlier on. The top of the iceberg there, which is the little bit that you see at the top that's floating in the sea, is about 4%. That's the area of the internet that's searchable by Google. The rest of the 90-odd% of it, in fact, is not searchable by Google and you can't find. And that's the data that's in your organisations, my organisations, etc. And then the little bit at the bottom is the dark net, the area of the internet that is not searchable, and because criminality is going on there. Paedophiles are swapping information, programmers are swapping malicious code, counter-antivirus services are going on there for malware writers who want to be in a position to make sure that their malware is not recognisable by the top 35 counter-antivirus products that are out there. For example, this is all happening in the dark web. And forums such as the Silk Road, which you saw, which we managed to do some damage to earlier on in the year, carried on. And these markets have drugs, firearms, counterfeit documents, child pornographic or child abuse images, as I prefer to call them, all carrying on under the nose. So what's EC3's role in that? Who are we and what are we doing? From our perspective, we have a mandate, which is to dealing with cybercrime which cause serious harm to their victims, which is generally child abuse, cybercrimes including attacks against critical infrastructure or systems in the European Union. And our mandate also extends to cybercrimes committed by organised crime groups where they're making lots of profit, and that's where you've got your internet-facilitated crime. And we've had some success over the last couple of years in targeting the airline industry because some analysis we've discovered that maybe up as far as 13% of all credit card fraud, in fact, is used to purchase airline tickets. Those airline tickets are being purchased by criminals, and those criminals are travelling all over the world, not because they like travelling all over the world, they're travelling all over the world in order to commit additional crime. And we've been working with Eurojust and law enforcement agencies all throughout the European Union and the airline industry in order to do that. So stuff like that, that's what our mandate is. Our products and services, I'll very quickly go through that. We have a malware analysis system. So, for example, when an investigation and law enforcement agency is carrying out an investigation, we're in a position in order to analyse that malware, say what the payload of it is, see if we've seen it before, potentially if we have seen it before, do we know who's written it, and in any way can that be attributed to the crime that has been investigated at EU member state level. Quite sophisticated system that we're using. A large file exchange. You do a botnet takedown and you actually pull the hard drive from the computer and it's there. There's no point in the computer being in Belgium if, for example, if in fact the investigation is being carried on by a law enforcement officer in Austria. So once the thing has gone down, somewhere along the way we have to be able to get those files or extracts of those files to the law enforcement agency or the prosecution service that's directing that investigation in the other country. So we have a large file exchange that would allow the transfer of, we say, 1 terabyte of data in pretty quick time from the systems in EC3. We have intelligence products that we produce, we carry out training, we have a digital forensics labs that even has a capability to do chip-off technology, and we have a decryption platform for those of you law enforcement officers who have finding material or files that are encrypted. We might be in a position to be able to help you with that and get valuable evidence for your prosecutions. So that's pretty much the products and services that we do. We carry a forensic training course on combating child sexual exploitation, and an open source IT forensics, of which I think, Eve, you're involved in from Belgium, and we're very grateful for your active participation in that. Eve is the chairman of the European Cybercrime Training and Education Group, and I think you're doing a fantastic job there. Our organisational structure in EC3, we have the operations department and the head of strategy and the head of EC3. Well, unfortunately, the head of EC3 resigned and left last week, and that's how come I'm replacing him here today. And I am actually the head of operations, but I am acting as the head of EC3 at the moment in the interim until a new head is appointed. We have EC3 teams in our strategy. We have outreach and support where we reach out to private industry partners, exactly like many of you that are here. We try and work with you and try and see if there's a way that you can help law enforcement investigations throughout the European Union. We have forensic expertise. We have our operations team, the cyber intelligence, Focal Point Terminal dealing with the fraud I spoke about with the airlines, Focal Point Cyborg dealing with the conventional cyber crimes such as the botnet takedowns and the dealing with crimes on the internet, and Focal Point Twins dealing with child sexual exploitation. 5 minutes, yeah? The last and certainly not least from our perspective, we've come up with a new initiative where in fact many of the challenges that we had were trying to coordinate investigations with law enforcement officers throughout the European Union was that in fact that's exactly what they were. The law enforcement officers were in their own country, they would come to us for an operational meeting, and in fact, you know, over a half day or a day and a half, even coming to EC3 and then going over to Eurojust to have a meeting over in Eurojust in relation to a case or a joint investigation that we're carrying on together. It's really quite difficult because the people go back to their stations, they get other competing priorities. So we've set up a joint cybercrime action task force on a pilot basis, and that pilot is due to finish at the end of next month, where one law enforcement officer from all the agencies and countries that you see on the screen, and yes, you're correct, you do see the bottom left-hand flag here is actually Colombia. So a law enforcement officer from Colombia has joined us, and we've had some quite an amount of success. I always have a very interesting story when we did the Airline Action Day, and on the very last call, on the very last day of the 2 days that we carried out the action, the Colombian officer, because he's in a completely different time zone, he's so many hours behind and there was some difficulties. The very last call, as we were finishing, they were still working in Colombia, and he got a call to say that there was a suspicious transaction on a flight that had carried out. Came back in via the centre. He was in a position to carry out some inquiries. The credit card company confirmed, in fact, that it was a fraud, and the person was arrested, and they were taken off the plane before they managed to get on the plane. And when they got them off and they took off their luggage, I don't know how this guy did this, but he had 24 kilos of cocaine in his luggage. I can't even get an extra pair of underpants in my Ryanair flight, but however, let's leave it at that. Okay, so that's going quite well. Investigations are kind of themed approaches where people work for a very long period of time looking at potential investigative opportunities. And I would say 8 out of 10 of those in reality probably come to nothing. But you keep them on the back burner because, you know, other information or other intelligence might come to you as a result of investigations that are coming from everywhere that might bring that back to the front burner again. Some of it going slowly, but some of it coming in nicely towards joint investigations, which we're then doing with our sister agency, Eurojust, and advancing those quite well. We had a meeting last week on a case that will be executed next month, and that came in out of the JCAT. So a really good and really positive signs. Yes, the United States Secret Service have sent somebody from Washington to join it, and the FBI, and again underneath the Australian Federal Police, also joined it because they saw the value of working together. Because in reality, in the area of cybercrime, really the only way that we can work is work together. And it's not a law enforcement on their own. It is not prosecutors on their own. It is not private industry on their own. It is not academia on their own. We have to form some sort of tripartite partnership if we have to have any credible hope of tackling cybercrime in the age that we live. Okay, again, I did say we speak about Operation Anonymous, and for those of you that are familiar with the Tor, you would have known that an operation led by the FBI resulted in quite a bit of the infrastructure that was on the Tor network, the amount of the servers that were facilitating the illegal markets on the Tor network were actually situated in the European Union. Even though the investigation was being led by the FBI, in reality they couldn't do it. They needed to come to the European Union in order for us to be in a position to take down that infrastructure, gather the information from the servers that are there. If we had the hidden keys belonging to those Tor servers, to put up the splash page with you can see it on the right-hand side, with the Eurojust EC3 symbols, FBI, and you'll see all the flags of all of the countries all around that participated in the operation. There were 414 hidden domains taken down, 17 arrests in 16 countries, drug markets, firearms, counterfeiting markets. But some of the media reporting on that said that we had actually failed, etc. But I think that was actually a misunderstanding. It wasn't 414 markets that were taken down. It was 414 hidden services, which are servers, multiples of which of those would be attached to one marketplace. So I reckon between 30 and 50 marketplaces were seriously disrupted. Some of them coming back up again, some people getting arrested and no longer doing this to the police. They might have it whistling, as we say in Ireland, a different tune. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that yes, I did manage 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillen. I understand that you are giving this same kind of speech later on today and later on this week in London, in Amsterdam. So we are very happy that you came down to Leuven to give your presentation. Thank you.